So I spoke about some of the qualities that I value in partnership, and of course, partnership itself being kind of the core thing, but other qualities would be respect, effective communication, trust, openness. So I know that values and motivations can evolve over time, so it's relevant to be attentive to my own motivations and the motivations of others, to assess and invite them to assess for themselves and express to me their motivations, interests, values, priorities, preferences, so on. I know that values and motivations can evolve over time. It can be as simple as when someone tastes a new food for the first time and they may discover that they like it or not. They like it a lot, or they may discover that they don't like it, but until they try it, how would they know for sure? So when I have a new experience in terms of openness and communication, for instance, or partnership, a confidence in a partnership, when I experience confidence in a partnership, or at least hope and courage and attraction to a partnership, so then I notice it when it's present, I value it, and then I miss it or notice it when it's absent, yearn for it, hunger for it. So for me, a major theme as far as like a really core thing that makes high quality partnership distinct from other kinds of partnership, or high quality interactions and conversations distinct from others, is respect for emotions. So I recognize the contrast between various kinds of emotional stability and instability. I recognize the contrast between various kinds of emotional maturity and immaturity. I may observe in other people their own internal emotional conflicts or conflicted emotions, as well as emotional purity, as in an absence of conflict or internal friction or internal suppression. So the more suppression there is of certain emotions, the more suppression that there is of certain emotions as shameful, the less pure or innocent someone would be. The more, did I say that right? So the less pure or innocent someone would be, the less graceful, relaxed, natural, spontaneous they are, the more they would be self-conscious and anxious and shy, reserved, even we could say immature, where if they have a lot of inner conflict, then they're going to want to play out those conflicts in their interactions, perhaps. They're going to want to find opportunities to make an emotional theater for them to, externalize internal narratives. So they have internal narratives of like, how they're a victim or how they're a savior or a reformer and whatever. So they want to externalize those negatives. So if somebody has experienced being a victim a lot, then they're going to externalize that negative narrative by accusing others of being villains or inviting others to be their saviors and to rescue them. So they'll present themselves as a victim, and to be a victim, they must constantly be attacked or harassed or threatened by a villain. And sometimes they're going to make whoever they're talking to into a villain, because that's their normal habit of interaction. So that's an aside, but that wouldn't be emotional purity. That would be an inner emotional conflict or momentum that's then brought out. I like this term momentum as an aside. So if someone has no particular momentum, they're not resisting particular emotions, they're not presenting or projecting particular emotions, they're just neutral, stable, steady, centered, then they have the capacity to change direction quickly, to be agile, to create new momentums, because they are not holding an old momentum, or they're not perpetuating an old momentum. They don't have an old momentum to justify. That's an actually really big thing with people who I'm going to call emotionally immature or impure or conflicted. There can be a great emphasis on justifying whatever their pattern of activity is, to continue that momentum. They want to justify the momentum. I was very sincere, and I am sincere about this. So even though it's not working for me or anyone else, you know, that kind of thing. That's a justification. So emotional purity includes things like faith and openness to not know and admit not knowing. Uncertainty doesn't need to, you know, for somebody who's a perfectionist, uncertainty is something to hide and be ashamed of. A cause for great anxiety, potentially. For someone that is emotionally pure, uncertainty is a fact. There's going to be occasions when a particular issue that is uncertain will be relevant or not relevant. And then if there's an uncertainty that is relevant from a mode of emotional purity or simplicity, we might explore obtaining certainty. How do we test that? How do we measure that? How do we verify an idea or a speculation? So I can observe in other people emotional conflicts as well as the absence of conflict or purity. In fact, not only do I notice my own experience of magnetism, and then notice that I pursue interactions that contribute to my emotional interest, my emotional stability, purity, maturity, health. I also value connecting emotionally with someone. Just connecting emotionally with someone, something I value. It's not that I've never valued it, but when I have the sense that someone else and I are both ripe and at a place where I can ongoingly connect, and the two people can ongoingly connect emotionally, that's distinctive. Because yeah, I've always liked emotionally connecting. I like what other people share with me, and I like sharing with them. But then what about when there's an actual momentum of connection, you know, and a momentum of stability and motivation, where emotions are interesting, respected, welcome, even actively explored, acknowledged, and cultivated. What are the different emotions and motivations and desires and priorities that can manifest through an interaction or through a partnership? How can the partnership be productive? Well, first of all, yeah, it's kind of nice to know, okay, here's a partnership that has the capacity for productivity. Okay, that's pretty cool. There's, two people that could be productive together. Now, what are they going to do with that? How much clarity is there? And if there's not clarity, if there's some uncertainty, well then maybe cultivating clarity would be relevant. And how do we cultivate clarity? Well, connecting emotionally can bring things into my conscious awareness with a lot of power and energy, so that I'm not only clear, but I'm committed and aligned and passionate, just really resolved in something. I'm really clear about it. So it's not that I'm stating it clearly, it's that I am internally clear. Back to the word pure. That's the thing. When it's the thing and there's a pure, singular interest, then that's pretty distinctive. So if emotional connection is nice, well, what if it's something that can be cultivated intentionally and lead to not just a conversation about productivity, but actual productivity, actual effectiveness at things that really matter to me, that I know matter to me because I have emotions in relation to those things. Strong emotions. So I've got strong emotions. They're welcomed. They're even required in some partnership. And then the partnership, can it forward those motivations? Can it promote those motivations? That's really, the basic question that is in my awareness, in my communication here as well. So I recognize in other people different levels of emotional stability, different levels of emotional maturity, as well as different degrees of openness or ripeness in regard to forming connections in which emotions are not only tolerated, not only welcomed, but even the primary foundation of the connection itself. Emotions are a primary value, a priority to have emotional clarity, maturity, stability, and connection. I want to connect to my own emotions and to those of other people, at least in some cases. In the cases of some people, I want to connect to their emotions. And that could be a really important foundation for fulfilling partnerships. Not just a partnership that's productive or effective, but fulfilling. That it's effective in regard to the things that matter most to me and whoever else is involved. Some people seem to have other priorities besides connecting emotionally. And that is something I can notice and respect. They may have other priorities besides cultivating their own maturity emotionally or their own stability emotionally. Again, I can respect that. Maybe they're vaguely interested, maybe they're curious, maybe they're interested for a while, they get to a certain point and then they're, have some other priority come up or whatever. I can notice all that. I can observe people's behavior and their patterns of communication and their interaction patterns and notice to what extent I feel resonant with them or dissonant with them in regard to, my experience in communicating with them or in watching them, listening to them, observing them, listening to them. So resonance corresponds to what? Affinity, connection, trust, attraction, to be brief. Dissonance corresponds to discomfort, competitiveness, antagonism, invalidation, justification, repulsion, interpersonal conflict between the people, as well as conflicts and incoherence and disorientation for a particular person. If they're disoriented, if they literally don't know what to do, they don't know how they feel, well, there's like an internal dissonance or incoherence. So in resonance, there is coherence, meaning like you could say simplicity, purity, right? Coherence means pure. It's like a crystallized thing instead of a thing that is amorphous in its form. So I can notice strong resonance as well as more moderate resonance. I can notice intense dissonance as well as slight dissonance. I can notice that I innately and intuitively trust certain people. Who? Those who seem to me to be, I can then analyze who do I trust and go, well, they seem to be more emotionally mature, more emotionally stable. That's why I trust them. I can notice that certain conversations, more than others, are emotionally nourishing to me. I can notice that in regard to someone's interactions with me, certain people are somewhat receptive or quite resistant or highly responsive and even even delighted. Some people are notably delighted consistently in their interactions with me. And even primarily delighted. Like there's some people who might be diluted or delayed or delighted regularly, frequently. But is that like a occasional variation across, lots of other variations where they're like, 80% of the time there's dissonance and then there's these periods of sudden and notable delight and affinity and connection, but kind of a background or a baseline of stability, but not real connection, not real affinity, openness, comfort. So there can be a background of discomfort and then some humor to lighten the discomfort, but there's still, this kind of ongoing process of discomfort, lighten the discomfort, discomfort, lighten the discomfort. And it's not, it can be wearisome or exhausting for me. I don't want to say exhausting, but it can be a chore, right? And a chore, that's, sometimes chores are very valuable. However, if I am consistently delighted along with somebody else, that's distinct from chores. I might be doing something, we might do some activity, building a house together, and I'm with a group of people that I really like and have fun with, and we enjoy building the house together. Yes, we build the house and we build it well, but we had fun doing it. There's this social connection, this even emotional connection. That's something I value. So functionality and productivity is good. Effectively build the house. That's good. If you argue with everybody while you do it, not so good. If there's no real affinity amongst the people as they do it, that doesn't really matter because the point is to build a house well. But if there's also delight, then that can actually be a thing that I notice and a thing that I want to like organize various activities around, not necessarily building a house, but just various things. I want to kind of organize my life around high quality communication and high quality interactions. So I start with one or a few, and I want to kind of have like, I think of like a ripple effect, and drop something into some still water and boom, there's that ripple that spreads out. The center is a strong connection, and then around that there can be other productive and fun and delightful things. It's not a problem if there's lots and lots of fun and lots of different ways, and do I build a house or have somebody else build it for me? Who cares? In regard to a house, I want a good house for a good deal. The building of a house isn't designed to create a relationship or a partnership that lasts. It's designed to build a house. It's a project. So there's projects, and then there's partnership, and a partnership, a connection, a bond that two people could have, for instance. Okay, so there's this idea of two people. They have a recognition of resonance, and there's all the different projects and priorities and things to do. They don't have to do them together, but they can talk about them together and do them together, do them separately, etc. So when I am delighted and another person is also delighted, I notice the distinctive rarity of that mutual delight. It's not that common that I experience mutual delight. And if it's consistent, ongoing mutual delight, I might notice that. In fact, I have noticed that. I can think of one particular relationship I had, or one particular person that I interacted with a lot, and there was a lot of delight. There were some other things too. There was some resistance and some complexity and tangle and all sorts of other stuff, but the delight was really distinctive and valuable to me. So I appreciate that element. It stood out, and it was such that some of the other chores were things that at that point in my life, with the amount of self-respect and determination that I had, I was like, okay, I want that amount of delight to be part of my future. I want to organize my future around delight like that. I remember saying that to myself, and I was very clear. I was very coherent. And in that particular case, what actually manifested was kind of, ongoing generation of mutual delight and not much else. And then as time went on, I focused on other priorities. So, and I guess notable would be that there was no actual, there was not a breakdown or a upset. There was just appreciation, whatever tensions were, as far as disappointments and frustrations. And then there was focusing on other things that I also appreciate, other potentials. So when there is consistent delight, consistent gratitude, consistent respect, consistent generating of pride through the interaction with two people, that can contrast with my typical experiences of routine interactions, as in what I've come to expect. I notice when my presumptions and expectations are violated by a series of interactions that are far more delightful than I expected, far more precious to me than most of my interactions in the past. They're distinctive, they are notable. I'm willing to identify interpersonal dynamics in which I experience powerful magnetism and high-quality communication. In fact, even with no plans to identify such experiences, when those experiences happen, they can be instantly obvious to me. I'm willing to explore how to reorganize my life in order to trigger my most powerful motivations, to access them, to trigger them, to fulfill them. By trigger them, I mean, if I've got latent motivations I want to know, I want to trigger them, and then I want to, experience the motivation of them and then fulfill them. So latent motivations aren't very useful. I want to trigger motivation, and the focus and clarity and courage and commitment that goes with having motivation be present in my experience, and then with that motivation, fulfill on them. I'm willing to speculate in regard to what my motivations are, could be, have been. Willing to speculate, to discuss, to experiment, to refine, not only in regard to the specific emotions emotions and motivations that might be present for me and other people involved, but methods and priorities and what to do, what routines to generate, what habits to review, to refine, to discard, to create. When I experience a sense of distinctive trust in the relationship itself, then I'm willing to untangle myself from lower quality alliances that might be what do you call that? Distractions, let's say. That's fair enough. So those could be alliances that they occur. I experience them as distracting, or like, distracting. I experience them as distracting, or basically unappealing, less appealing. Even though they might have been very reliable, efficient, effective, productive, valuable, stable, they might have been all those things, at least in regard to certain priorities. But I might be willing to reduce them, sacrifice them, or terminate them in order to produce a high-quality partnership, in order to pursue a high-quality partnership, to explore a high-quality partnership, or to explore a partnership that could be a high-quality partnership. Certainly I value stability, as I mentioned, in regard to alliances that would promote stability. I can recognize that they consistently promote stability in some cases. Awesome, wonderful. I value stability. Further, I value high-quality communication and high-quality partnership, whatever that means. Now, in or through high-quality communication and partnership, can that change the kinds of stabilities that are available to me, that are realistic or possible for me to access, to experience? It is possible, perhaps, that a completely new level of stability, security, health, strength, satisfaction will be available through connecting emotionally, like really connecting emotionally. Pure connection, not a distracted, conflicted, compromise, impure connection. Not a partial connection, not a, hesitant connection, but the idea of an incremental, intentional, and even comprehensive connection. Meaning sharing, communication. So connecting emotionally, communicating powerfully, partnering effectively and on point in terms of what the actual motivations and interests are, so that when there's an investment in a particular result and we effectively produce it, we experience real pride and appreciation for the result that has been produced. So with that kind of context, or even new experiences like the ones I just mentioned, is it possible for new kinds of stability to be created, or new structures to be created on that foundation? I'll put it that way as an architectural analogy. On that foundation, can new, stronger, taller, different, more creative, more interesting structures be created? Well, maybe so. Even new alliances, new projects, whatever. So I can rely on stability. Stability, consistency, it's reliable. That's awesome. I can rely on it. However, after a foundation of stability is already present, then I may no longer be insecure. So once I go from instability to stability, then that's a shift in my priorities. With greater general stability in my life comes greater general security. With general security comes a ripeness for emotional connection that might not have been present previously. With general security, with certain other priorities fulfilled, then the next thing might at some point be an interest in pure emotional connection, emotional intimacy, as distinct from other kinds of intimacy, physical intimacy and various kinds of intimacy. Proximity is a kind of intimacy, just in my personal space, that kind of thing. There's proximity. There's personal, like physical, sexual intimacies, and then there's emotional intimacy. That is a distinct thing, and at some point that might be something that someone is willing to explore based on some, positive developments. So positive developments, I have hope for emotional intimacy that I might not have had a hope for previously. With general security can come a ripeness for emotional connection, a ripeness for trust, a ripeness for partnership, a ripeness for pure delight, which sounds to me like a type of fruit juice, but that's sunny delight. How much resonance do you experience in relation to this communication, this what you see and hear right now? How much resonance do you experience in relation to it? Do you feel certain values stimulated within yourself, certain motivations stimulated within yourself, certain interests? Do you feel some resonance? And what kind of resonance? What is resonating for you? Do you recognize a simplicity and a clarity and a familiarity of some kind that contrasts with past experiences, such as ambiguity, complexity, incoherence, like ambiguity, and confusion even? Do you in yourself resonate with simplicity, clarity, directness? This is relatively direct relative to other contrasting experiences. Is it? Is that something that's going on for you? How ripe are you for cultivating whatever experience you have now? How ripe are you for cultivating it further? In particular, how ripe are you for cultivating simplicity as an experience? How ripe are you for cultivating fulfillment as an experience, delight as an experience, clarity as an experience, resonance as an experience? Oh shit. Joy, humor, relaxation, lightness, fun. How open are you to, how ripe are you to cultivating fun as an experience? With full awareness that trust is no guarantee of satisfying results. In other words, I know that just me trusting in something doesn't necessarily guarantee any particular result. Or even me being optimistic about it doesn't guarantee any particular result. So with full awareness that trust is no guarantee of satisfying results, or 100% satisfying result, never any disappointment, never any conflict, tension, discomfort, frustration, learning, revision. Trust doesn't solve all possible complication or inefficiency. But even with the full awareness that trust doesn't, produce automatic total efficiency and satisfaction and fulfillment every single time, no matter what. Well, even with that awareness, are you willing to trust your own experience of trust? In other words, when you trust something, are you willing to trust that you trust it? Are you willing to act on your trust of whatever you trust? So if you know that you trust something, if you see, looking back at your actions, that you do have confidence and trust and satisfaction and interest in whatever, maybe, whatever words you might use, if you experience that resonance ongoingly, over and over, are you willing to take actions that respect your experience? Are you willing to trust your experience? Are you willing to invest in and organize your plans around things that you eventually realize that you trust? Maybe you that you eventually realize that you consider to be distinctively high quality, remarkably high quality. Are you willing to notice what you trust and to focus on whatever you trust, to cultivate it, to focus on even continuing to identify over time what you trust and how you trust it, and just be really attuned to the issue of trust, not just the issue of something like loyalty or consistency or something. Yeah, I want to be consistent. I said blah blah blah, so I'm going to be consistent with that. All right. What about trust? What about confidence? What about pride? Are you willing to notice what interactions generate in you pride or contribute to you experiencing pride? And then taking actions that might cultivate more and more of that consequence of pride, that consequence of gratitude, delight, whatever it may be. Are you willing to notice what you trust and focus on what you trust, even at the expense of options that you know you distrust? Options that you experience as unreliable or insecure or flaky or conflicted. Are you ripe to focus on what you trust and identifying what that is? Are you open to withdraw your attention from things that you recognize are not comfortable for you and that you do not trust, or that you don't that don't delight you? Are you open to withdraw your attention from things that do not delight you, that you experience as complications, as entangling, that occasionally or frequently are uncomfortable, or not, or you question whether they're worth whatever amount of discomfort is there? Like if there's occasional moderate discomfort, that's probably going to happen occasionally. But are you open to withdraw your attention from things that you find repulsive or not especially rewarding? Are you open to withdraw your investment in things that are not incredibly rewarding in order to invest in things that might be quite a bit more rewarding? Are you willing to stop studying obsessively things that cause you discomfort and simply stop studying them, withdraw from them, minimize them, and focus on a core, organizing around a core of what works and what is inspiring, rather than things that are not working or uncomfortable or whatever, or that were challenging? Are you willing to set aside a focus on sorting through conflicts, past conflicts? Are you willing to set aside sorting through past conflicts, willing to set aside the fact that there may be some emotional conflict at any particular point in time, in the future, in the present, whatever? Emotional conflict can happen, and we don't have to organize around studying that obsessively. What if we organize around identifying motivation, identifying high quality partnership, and fulfilling on whatever is most attractive to us, with the involvement of whoever is most appealing to include? Are you open to cultivating trust with another person that you select because of your experience of resonance with them? So if you notice an experience of resonance with somebody, are you open to cultivating trust with that person? Are you open to noticing who you resonate well with and then cultivating trust and partnership with them? Are you merely open to it or devoted to it, or what? Curious about it, skeptical, intrigued, fascinated, nervous, anxious, eager, terrified. I just laughed. Does that mean I was terrified when I said that? Embarrassed, amused. Ooh, Delighted? Are you delighted by the are you delighted by the possibility of noticing who you resonate well with and then partnering with them, cultivating partnership with them, cultivating trust, emotional connection, effective communication, respect, blah, 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 blah. Are you open to it, devoted to it, delighted by that possibility? What's your actual experience like right now? Are you devoted to the exploration of a partnership that is so effective and relevant to you that you trust it completely? Are you, okay, consider the idea that there is a partnership that is very effective and very relevant to you personally, such that you just naturally trust it. And if you had that kind of experience of that kind of a partnership, or at least the hints of that kind of communication and the possibility of that kind of partnership, how devoted are you to exploring that? How are you devoted? How devoted are you? How interested? How curious? How resistant? How skeptical? How open? How much do you respect your own experience? And how much interest do you have in other people giving you permission to do something, other people encouraging you to do something? You're waiting for external validation? Or are you just respecting your inner experience? I resonate, I experience delight and commitment, like I keep wanting to do certain things. So it's really, I experience clarity. So if there's a really clear experience, a really clear motivation and attraction, am I willing to act on that? Am I at least interested in acting on it? I don't mean am I willing to act on it in any particular way. I mean, am I willing to explore acting on it with an intention to actually act on it? Although I may change that intention, but an intention to act on my experience. My own motivations arise to the surface, I notice them, and then I organize around them, including how that may be guiding me in relation to other people. One other person, lots of other people. How much do I honor, respect, and value my experience, my motivations, my capacity, and my inspiration when something is inspiring to me? How much do I notice that, or how much do I tangle up in distractions and diversions? Devotion. Devotion is not part of alliances generally, but it could be part of partnership.